There are lands defined by their coastlines, their characters shaped by the ebb and flow of tides, their stories whispered on ocean winds. Their identity is one of outward reach of harbors and horizons. And then, there are lands defined by their very lack of a sea. Nations landlocked and yet boundless, whose shores are not of water, but of other countries, other cultures, other empires. Their identity is forged not by the patient rhythm of the ocean, but by the turbulent, unceasing currents of history that flow across the continent. This is the story of such a place. To understand Serbia is to understand what it means to be a gateway, a crossroads, and a bastion all at once. It is to explore a country that, despite its heartland position, has always been on the frontier of great change, a nation whose soul has been meticulously carved by the meeting and clashing of worlds. This is a journey into the resilient heart of the Balkans. The very geography of Serbia is a declaration of its destiny. Look at a map and you see not an isolated territory, but a central artery. To the north, the vast Pannonian plain unfurls like a carpet, inviting passage, trade, and armies from the heart of Europe. To the south and west, the rugged Dinaric Alps rise as a formidable spine, a natural fortress that has sheltered peoples and preserved traditions for millennia. This duality of open plains and sheltering mountains is the physical manifestation of Serbia's spirit. Open to influence, yet fiercely protective of its core identity. Why is this geographical position so profoundly important? Because for centuries, this land was the very demarcation line, the contested threshold between the Ottoman Empire to the east and the Austro-Hungarian Empire to the west. It wasn't merely a border. It was a civilizational fault line. The people living here did not just observe history. They inhabited it. Their farms were battlefields. Their rivers were strategic corridors. Their faith was a statement of allegiance. Imagine a single stone, plucked from the ancient walls of Belgrade's Kalemegdan fortress. That stone has felt the sandals of Roman legionaries, absorbed the echoes of Ottoman calls to prayer, stood silent against the cannon fire of Habsburg sieges, and now bears witness to the laughter of children in a modern European capital. What does it mean for a people to build their future upon foundations so saturated with the past? It means that resilience is not a choice. It is an inheritance. It means that culture is not a static display, but a living dialogue between what was, what is, and what will be. The legacy of being a gateway is that you are forever a mosaic, a complex and often contradictory tapestry woven from threads of Slavic pride, Byzantine spirituality, Ottoman influence, and a deep-seated European yearning. To truly feel this, you must stand here at the confluence. Below the ancient ramparts of the fortress, two great rivers meet in a slow, majestic embrace. The Sava, flowing from the west, merges its waters with the mighty Danube, a river that has traveled from Germany's Black Forest and will continue its journey to the Black Sea. This is more than a geographical feature. It is the nation's spiritual and historical epicenter. Watch the light play upon the surface. The water is a shifting canvas of greens and blues, carrying the silt and stories of half a continent. On one bank, the old city, Stari Grad, breathes with the weight of centuries. Its architecture tells tales of empires and kingdoms. Across the water, Novi Belgrade, or New Belgrade, rises in stark, modernist relief, a testament to a socialist past and a corporate future. In this single vista, the entire narrative of Serbia unfolds. The air itself feels layered, thick with the silent accumulation of triumph and tragedy. You can feel the city's pulse beneath your feet, a rhythm that is at once ancient and restlessly modern. It is a moment of profound stillness, a place where time seems to bend, connecting the Roman galley to the river barge, the medieval prince to the modern-day poet. The convergence of these two rivers, then, is not merely a metaphor. It is the living, breathing reality of the nation. It demonstrates how disparate currents of culture, of faith, of empire, can flow together to create something new, something powerful, something undeniably Serbian. The city of Belgrade, and by extension the entire country, exists as a product of this constant meeting, this perpetual state of becoming. But to truly understand the heart that beats within this city, to grasp the resilience etched into these faces and the stories embedded in this soil, we cannot simply admire the view from the present. We must journey back along the river of time itself. We must ask, what ancient fires and monumental floods first forged this unyielding spirit? The answer to that resilience is not found on the surface, but buried deep in the geology of memory. If a nation's spirit is a river, then the Serbian spirit is one that has carved its way through history's hardest canyons, eroded and rerouted, but never run dry. To understand Serbia's heart today, we must travel back in time, to an era when its kingdom was a power to be reckoned with, a beacon of culture and faith before the imperial shadows fell. This journey begins in a golden age, when the name Serbia was synonymous with sovereignty. During the Middle Ages, the Nemanjic dynasty built a state that was not only militarily strong, but culturally brilliant. This was not just a historical period. It was the blueprint for the national soul. Why does this era matter so much? Because it was here that the constants of Serbian identity were set. An independent state, its own legal code under Emperor Dusan, and crucially, an autonomous Serbian Orthodox Church. The church became more than a place of worship. It became the guardian of the language, the Cyrillic alphabet, and the very spirit of the people. Imagine the monasteries of Studenica or Milesiva, seeming to grow right out of the rock. They were not just buildings. They were testaments in stone, spiritual anchors dropped deep into the mother soil, as if in anticipation of a long and brutal winter to come. The Nemanjic legacy gave the Serbs something more valuable than gold. A memory of greatness to cling to, a clear vision of who they were in the face of centuries of lost freedom. And then the shadows fell from the east. The Ottoman Empire, an unstoppable force, swept across the Balkans. For Serbia, this was more than a political change. It was a fracture in the very fabric of reality. 5 centuries of Ottoman rule was a long, slow trial. Life changed. The old nobility vanished, and a brutal blood tax, the Danka u Krvi, took the healthiest young boys from their families to serve the Sultan's army. What can possibly survive such a long and persistent pressure? With political freedom gone, where did the Serbs find refuge? They found it in their families, in the stories told around the hearth, and above all, in their faith. The church, once a symbol of state power, became a fortress of cultural survival. Monks preserved ancient books, and blind bards, the guslars, traveled from village to village, strumming a single-stringed instrument and reciting epic poems of lost kings and heroes. It was in this darkness that resilience was forged. It ceased to be a virtue. It became an instinct for survival. No event encapsulates the pain, pride, and sacrifice of this period more than the Battle of Kosovo in 1389. Militarily, it was a catastrophic defeat. But in the Serbian psyche, it became something else entirely. As legend tells, on the eve of the battle, Prince Lazar was offered a choice. An earthly kingdom, where he would win and rule, or a heavenly kingdom, where he and his army would perish defending their faith and honor. He chose the heavenly kingdom. This choice transformed a battlefield loss into a spiritual victory. It redefined winning not as survival, but as purposeful sacrifice. How does a nation turn its greatest military defeat into its most profound spiritual victory? By turning it into a founding myth, an eternal vow. The Battle of Kosovo is not a memory of what was lost. It is a statement of what could never be taken. Honor, faith, and an identity paid for in blood. Finally, after 500 smoldering years, the fires of resistance ignited. In the early 19th century, uprisings broke out, fueled by the memories woven in epic poems and nurtured in remote monasteries. Like amber cracking to release a long-trapped life, Serbia fought its way back to independence, finally achieving it in 1878. Recognition as a sovereign state felt like the closing of a tragic and epic chapter. It seemed that at last, after a turbulent millennium, Serbia's river of history could flow peacefully into the open sea of freedom. But history is rarely so simple. The ink was barely dry on the treaties recognizing a free Serbia when the currents of a new, more modern, and perhaps more brutal century began to stir. The 20th century did not arrive like a sunrise, but like a storm. It was an age of extremes, of magnificent invention and unimaginable destruction. a furnace designed to test the hardest of metals. For a nation that had only just found itself again, this century would be more than a new chapter. It would be a trial by fire. That fledgling independence, earned over 5 centuries of struggle, was about to be thrown into the epicenter of humanity's most devastating conflicts, forcing the nation to confront questions of survival and identity in ways not even the Ottomans had managed. The first tremor began with a gunshot. The assassination in Sarajevo in 1914 was more than a political act. It was the spark that set Europe ablaze. Why was this so formative? Because it put Serbia in an impossible position, at the very center of a global catastrophe. Blamed for the war, the small nation endured a horrific punishment. The Serbian army, fighting valiantly, was forced into a tragic retreat across the frozen mountains of Albania, an odyssey of death and survival that is seared into the collective memory. The outcome of the First World War for Serbia was a Pyrrhic victory. They were on the winning side, but the cost was staggering. They lost nearly a third of their male population. That isn't just a statistic. It's a hole in the national soul, a lost generation. But from these ashes, a new dream was born. The dream of Yugoslavia, the land of the South Slavs. It was a radical idea, an attempt to unite peoples of common ancestry, long divided by empires, into a single home, a greater identity. Under the charismatic and iron-fisted rule of Tito, the motto of brotherhood and unity became the foundation of the state, holding a complex family together. And then that house fell apart. The collapse of Yugoslavia in the 1990s was not just the end of a country. It was the end of a world, a tragedy of neighbors. Zoom in from the political map to a single street, a single apartment building. There, people who had shared meals, celebrated weddings, and mourned losses together were now looking at each other through the lens of ethnicity and religion. Ancient history, long-buried resentments, rose up like ghosts. How could a shared dream disintegrate into a private nightmare? How could brotherhood give way to suspicion and violence? The wars that followed left indelible scars across the region. The issue of Kosovo, another painful chapter, is the final legacy of that breakup, a reminder that some of history's wounds are still fresh. A century that began with reclaiming independence ended with the nation smaller, isolated, and bearing the heavy weight of memory. Serbia entered the 21st century not with the optimism of a victor, but with the exhaustion of a survivor. It had seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, empires, and ideologies. It had lived through world wars and civil wars. The hurricane of the 20th century had swept it all away, leaving a land and a people to once again redefine themselves. But when the dust of history settles, when maps are redrawn and flags are changed, what truly remains? When the external political structures crumble, where do people turn for strength? They turn inward. They turn to the things that cannot be destroyed by bombs or treaties. So, after all the historical storms have passed, what is left in the soul of these people? What is left is the core, the essence distilled through centuries of pressure. When the tempests of history subside, what emerges is not a ruin, but a solid foundation of culture and character. To understand Serbia today, we must shift our gaze from battles and treaties to dinner table conversations, village festivals, and the human heart. For it is here, in the everyday expressions of life, that the true soul of Serbia is most completely revealed. This is an exploration of the intangible values that have allowed a people not just to endure, but to remain distinctly themselves. If you had to describe the Serbian character in one word, many would choose hospitable. But hospitality here is not a polite social grace. It is a moral duty, a legacy from a time when giving a stranger shelter could mean the difference between life and death. A guest in the home is considered a blessing from God. They will be served the best food, poured the strongest drink, and offered the most genuine conversation. But beneath that warmth lies a granite layer of resilience, something encapsulated in a notoriously untranslatable word, Inat. Inat is not mere stubbornness or defiance. It is an act of illogical, passionate resistance against pressure, a way of asserting one's dignity when all else is being taken away. Why would such a concept flourish? Because when you have lived for centuries under foreign rule, Saying no for no logical reason is sometimes the only act of freedom you have. Inat is building a house right in the path of an enemy's planned road, or singing louder when told to be silent. It is a defense mechanism honed by history, a declaration that I exist on my own terms. This inner strength is nurtured by two cultural pillars: family and faith. The Serbian Orthodox Church, as we've seen, is more than a religious institution. It is the custodian of identity. But there is a tradition even more unique and profound, something recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity: the Slava. Every Serbian family has its own patron saint, and the day celebrating that saint, the Slava, is the most important holiday of the year, more so than even Christmas or a birthday. Picture a home, its doors wide open on Slava. A special Slava cake is baked, a candle burns all day, and friends and neighbors simply arrive without an invitation. The Slava is an invisible thread connecting generations, from the distant ancestor who first adopted the saint to the children running through the room. It reinforces family and community bonds in a deeply intimate way. It is a yearly reminder that you are not alone. You are part of a lineage, part of a larger story. And where there are people, there is music and celebration. But in Serbia, music is not just entertainment. It is the voice of the soul. Sure, you will find talented street musicians in Belgrade. But to really feel the country's primal rhythm, you must go to a festival like Guka. Imagine a small town transformed for a few days into a whirlwind of brass band music. Bands from all over compete in a frenzy of sound, playing tunes that are at once joyous and mournful. Guka is not a polished concert. It's a raw, visceral explosion of collective energy, a celebration of life itself. And at the other end of the spectrum is Exit, one of Europe's biggest music festivals, held within the walls of the Petrovaradin Fortress in Novi Sad. This festival was born from a student movement for democracy, and it retains that spirit of resistance and hope. On one hand, the rustic brass of Guka, on the other, the electronic bass of Exit. What does this duality say about Serbia? It reveals a culture that is unafraid to embrace both its past and its future, a place where the oldest traditions can coexist with the most modern expressions. From the deep-seated hospitality and the defiant spirit of Inat, to the binding ties of the Slava and the explosive energy of its festivals, a clearer picture of the Serbian soul begins to emerge. It's a complex picture, painted with the colors of joy and sorrow, resilience and pride. These are not just cultural traits. They are survival tools, the spiritual armor that has seen a nation through its harshest trials. But how do these abstract values manifest themselves in physical space, in streets and buildings? Let us now explore the place where all these currents converge, the very heart of the nation, the city of Belgrade. Every great city is a living body, with arteries of traffic, lungs of green parkland, and a heart that beats to its own rhythm. The heart of Serbia is Belgrade, the White City, a name both romantic and prophetic. Situated at the sacred confluence of the Sava and Danube rivers, Belgrade is more than a capital. It is a chronicle in stone and mortar, a city destroyed and reborn from its own ashes more than 40 times in its history. It is this constant regeneration that gives it a unique energy, a blend of scarred, ancient beauty and a fierce, modern vitality. To explore Belgrade is to explore the very layers of the Serbian soul. Our journey begins where the city began, at the Kalemegdan Fortress. Standing on these ancient ramparts, you are not just looking at a view. You are standing atop 2 millennia of history. The air here is thick with stories. Let your imagination wander. Beneath your feet, Roman legionaries patrolled, Slavic warriors built their first fortifications, and Ottoman pashas surveyed their empire. Every stone here is a silent witness. But Kalemegdan is no cold museum. It is the city's living room, where couples stroll, old men play chess, and children chase pigeons. This contrast is the essence of Belgrade, a past so present it isn't a burden, but simply part of daily life. From the fortress, we descend into Knez Mihailova Street. This is the city's main artery, a grand open-air stage. Magnificent 19th-century European-style buildings stand shoulder to shoulder like elegant gentlemen, their facades still bearing the subtle marks of time. A constant stream of people flows here, a mix of locals, tourists, and the street musicians who have made this their concert hall. And then, just steps away, another world opens up in Skadarlija, the city's bohemian quarter. With its bumpy cobblestone streets and traditional taverns, or kafanas, filled with music and laughter, Skadarlija feels like a poem to the past, a corner of 19th century Paris carefully preserved in the heart of the Balkans. This is Old Belgrade, Stari Grad, a labyrinth of history and charm. But to understand the full story of this city, we must do what history and geography have always done: cross the river Sava. As you travel over one of the bridges connecting the two banks, a dramatic shift occurs. The landscape transforms. Winding streets are replaced by broad, sweeping avenues, and historic buildings give way to the massive, concrete superstructures of Novi Belgrade, or New Belgrade. Why is the contrast so stark? Because New Belgrade did not grow organically. It was built with a purpose. After World War II, this marshland was reclaimed to become the capital of a new socialist Yugoslavia. The buildings here, designed in the brutalist style, were not meant to be charming. They were meant to project strength, efficiency, and a vision of the future. They are monuments to an ideology, enormous residential blocks known as blokovi that became icons of an era. Today, New Belgrade is transforming yet again. Interspersed between the concrete giants are gleaming glass office towers, headquarters for global tech corporations. Modern shopping malls rise next to old-world markets. Novi Beograd, once the symbol of a socialist dream, is now becoming the face of Serbian capitalism. To stand between these worlds is a unique experience. You can feel the tension between two eras, two ideologies, two visions for the future. Belgrade, therefore, is not one city, but two, separated and yet connected by the river. On one side, memory, tradition, and charming chaos. On the other, order, ambition, and a relentless push forward. The two banks of the Sava are not just geographical areas. They are two states of the Belgrade soul. To experience Belgrade is not to check off a list of sights. It is to feel the collision and fusion of these different worlds. It is to drink a coffee in a trendy Stari Grad cafe while looking at a building still bearing the pockmarks from the NATO bombing. It is to walk through the brutalist architecture of Novi Beograd and feel both the grandeur and the melancholy of a bygone dream. This city does not hide its scars. It wears them like medals. But a city is more than stone and concrete. It is also flavor and aroma, the things that nourish the body as well as the soul. So, to truly understand the pulse of life here, we must discover what happens in its kitchens and its taverns. If history is the skeleton and architecture the skin of a city, then its food is the very blood that runs through its veins, providing warmth, energy, and life. To truly feel the pulse of Belgrade, and of Serbia itself, you must take a seat at their table. Because here, food is not just for sustenance. It is an act of sharing, a vehicle for storytelling, and the most flavorful expression of hospitality. Serbian cuisine is not delicate or refined. It is honest, hearty, and generous, much like the people who created it. This is a journey into a world of slow-cooked stews, smoky grilled meats, and a spirit that can ignite the soul. The heart of Serbian cuisine is found over charcoal embers. As you walk the streets, an unmistakable scent drifts through the air, the aroma of grilling meat. This is the siren call of pljeskavica and cevapi. Pljeskavica is often described as the Balkan hamburger, but that comparison barely does it justice. It is a large, seasoned patty of minced meat, grilled to perfection, often stuffed with spicy cheese, and served in a warm, pillowy flatbread called lapinja. Cevapi are smaller, caseless sausages of minced meat, served with chopped onions and a roasted red pepper relish called ivar. Why do these simple dishes hold such a special place in the culture? Because they are the people's food, accessible, satisfying, and enjoyed by everyone from construction workers to businessmen. They are a symbol of an unpretentious cuisine, where the quality of the ingredients and the skill of the grill master are paramount. But there is more than just grilled meat. There is sarma, cabbage rolls stuffed with meat and rice, simmered for hours until they melt in your mouth. There is jabanica, a flaky, savory pastry of phyllo dough and cheese, the ultimate comfort food. But to truly experience these dishes the Serbian way, you can't just go to a restaurant. You must find a kafana. The kafana is not just a tavern or an eatery. It is a social institution, a third space between home and work. It is where deals are made, political debates rage, poems are written, and broken hearts are mended. Step inside a traditional kafana. The space is often hazy with cigarette smoke, the walls adorned with old photographs, and the air thick with the sound of conversation and live music. Musicians play bittersweet melodies, songs of lost love and national pride. People drink, eat, sing along, and sometimes dance. The kafana is the theater of everyday life, a place where all emotions are welcome and judgment is left at the door. It is the soul of the city, where joy and sorrow are shared openly. Here, you are not just having a meal. You are participating in a social ritual that has endured for generations. And no ritual in a kafana, or any Serbian gathering, is complete without rakića. To call rakića simply a brandy is like calling the sun simply a light bulb. Rakića is the national spirit, a potent fruit distillate, most famously made from plums, slivovicka, but also from apricots, grapes, or quince. It is ubiquitous. It is drunk to start the day, to celebrate a birth, to mourn a death, and to welcome a guest. It is considered a cure-all for everything from a toothache to a broken heart. Drinking rakića is not just about consumption. It is a ceremony. It is meant to be sipped, not shot, and is always accompanied by a toast and direct eye contact. An offer of homemade rakića from a host is the highest sign of respect and trust. It is the social lubricant, the catalyst for conversation, and a tangible symbol of that deep-seated hospitality. It warms the body and, as the Serbs say, opens the soul. From the hot off-the-grill pljeskavica on the street, to the boisterous intimacy of a kafana, and finishing with the fiery warmth of a glass of rakića, we begin to taste the essence of Serbia. It is a flavor of authenticity, of unapologetic generosity, and of a fierce love of life, distilled from both the sweet and the bitter fruits of its history. This food does not just nourish the body. It tells a story of a bountiful land and a people who know how to enjoy its gifts. But to truly understand the country's diversity, we must leave the familiar streets of the capital. Because beyond Belgrade, an entirely different Serbia awaits, with landscapes and stories of its own. Any capital city, no matter how vibrant, is only one chapter in a nation's book. Belgrade, for all its complexity and energy, is no exception. To truly read the full story of Serbia, we must journey beyond the city limits, into the lands where the rhythm of life slows, the landscape transforms, and different chapters of history are revealed. For Serbia is not a monolith. It is a tapestry woven from many different colored threads. To leave Belgrade is to leave the noisy hub and listen to the whispers of the countryside, of smaller cities, and of nature itself. Our journey begins to the north, crossing the Danube into the region of Vojvodina. Immediately, the landscape changes. The rolling hills give way to a vast, flat plain that stretches to the horizon, a piece of the Great Pannonian Basin. Why does this land feel so different? Because for centuries it belonged not to the Ottoman Empire, but to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That legacy is everywhere. In the colorful Baroque architecture of its towns, in the ethnic and linguistic diversity of its people, and in a more orderly, placid atmosphere. The heart of Vojvodina is Novi Sad, a former European capital of culture, an elegant and sophisticated city on the banks of the Danube. Its Petrovaradin fortress, a masterpiece of Austrian military engineering, stands guard opposite the city center, creating a postcard-perfect scene. Novi Sad feels like the calm, urbane cousin to Belgrade's boisterous energy. It shows another face of Serbia, one shaped as much by Central Europe as by the Balkans. A reminder that Serbian identity is not a single block of stone, but a mosaic of influences. From the flatlands of the north, we travel west and south, where the terrain begins to swell into dramatic mountains. This is the world of national parks like Tara and Kopaonik. The beauty here is wild and untamed. Tara National Park is a kingdom of dense forests, deep canyons carved by the emerald green Dina River, and a sanctuary for the European brown bear. Standing on a viewpoint, looking down at the river snaking below, you feel you are touching the permanence of nature, a world immune to the tides of human history. Kopaonik, in winter, transforms into a white paradise, the largest ski resort in southeastern Europe. Why are these wild places so important to the Serbian soul? Because they provide balance. If Belgrade is where history is written by man, these mountains are where history is written by the earth itself. They are a place of escape, of rejuvenation, and of reconnection to something more primal and authentic. They are a statement that beneath the layers of empires and wars, there lies an unwavering natural foundation. And finally, we head east, following the Danube as it grows to its most powerful and dramatic. Here, the mighty river has carved one of Europe's most spectacular gorges, the Iron Gates. For miles, the river is squeezed between the towering cliffs of Serbia on one side and Romania on the other. It is a spectacle of raw, natural power. The history here is as ancient as the river itself. On a cliff face, you can see the Tabula Triana, a marble plaque carved by the Roman Emperor Trajan to commemorate the completion of his military road. Nearby lies Lepenski Vir, one of the most important prehistoric urban settlements in Europe, dating back almost 10,000 years. Standing here, amid the power of the river and the depth of history, you realize the story of this land is far older than the Serbs, the Romans, or any empire. It is a story of the relationship between man and nature, a dialogue that has lasted for millennia. From the Baroque cities of Vojvodina, to the wild peaks of Tara, and the majestic beauty of the Iron Gates, the picture of Serbia becomes fuller and far more dimensional. It becomes clear that there is no single Serbia, but many, each region with its own character and its own story. This diversity is the nation's strength. But among all these different landscapes and histories, how does the country function in the modern world? What is its economy, and what factors shape the daily life of its people? The stories of history and the canvases of dramatic landscapes paint the soul and the scenery of Serbia. But a nation doesn't just exist in its past or in its wilderness. It lives and breathes in the everyday, in the rhythms of work, the morning commute, and the economic decisions that shape its future. To complete our portrait of Serbia, we need to shift our focus from the monumental to the mundane, from the grand statues to the grocery store aisles. This is a look at the daily life and the economy of a nation in transition, a country striving to find its place in modern Europe. Serbia's economy today is a story of transformation. Traditionally an agricultural powerhouse, with the fertile plains of Vojvodina known as the breadbasket of old Yugoslavia, the country retains a strong farming base. But the most exciting economic story is unfolding in the cities, especially Belgrade and Novi Sad. A quiet revolution is underway. The rise of the IT sector. Tech startups are booming, attracting talent and foreign investment, turning Serbia into a fast-growing tech hub in the Balkans. Why is this shift so important? Because it represents a fundamental change in mindset. It shows a country no longer looking only to its agricultural or heavy industry past, but investing in knowledge and innovation. It's an attempt to compete on a global stage, using its most valuable asset, human ingenuity. This shift creates a new dynamism, a sense of possibility and hope for a young generation looking for opportunity at home. This economic energy plays out against a backdrop of a cost of living that is relatively affordable compared to the rest of Europe. To get a sense of this, you need only step into a Maxi, the most popular supermarket chain. Everyday essentials, from milk and pasta to salami, often cost just $1 or $2. The local currency is the Serbian dinar, and its existence, outside the Eurozone, gives the country a degree of economic autonomy. What does this mean for locals and visitors? It means life can be a little more breathable, and a hearty meal or a full shopping cart won't necessarily break the bank. This balance, however, is a delicate one, with the challenges of inflation and employment ever present. The daily life of a Serb is a constant calculation between modest salaries and reasonable costs, a reality familiar to many developing nations. Getting around in that daily life presents another picture. In Belgrade, a city of nearly 2 million, the absence of a subway system is a notable feature. Instead, the city relies on a dense, sprawling network of buses, trams, and trolleybuses. To an outsider, the system can seem chaotic, but for a local, it's a familiar dance. The iconic red buses are an integral part of the urban landscape. Yet, the lack of investment in modern public transit also speaks to the larger challenges the country faces. Taxis are another story, a game of chance between honest drivers and those willing to overcharge a visitor. The contrast between a booming tech sector and an aging public transport system encapsulates the push and pull of modern Serbia. One foot reaching for the future, the other still weighed down by the legacies of the past. And overarching all these daily realities is the big question of the future: Serbia's relationship with the European Union. As an official candidate country, Serbia stands at Europe's doorstep, but the path to full membership is a thorny one, complicated by the legacies of history and political demands. The aspiration to be part of the EU is everywhere, in political debates and in people's hopes for a more prosperous and stable future. But it's also met with apprehension about a loss of sovereignty and identity. Life in Serbia today is defined by this waiting, this state of being suspended between East and West, between a Balkan past and a European future. It is in this space, between hope and challenge, that the real life of the Serbian people unfolds. But beyond economics and politics, what gives a nation its pride in the modern world? It is the symbols, the exceptional individuals who have transcended borders to make their mark on the entire globe. Every nation has its heroes etched in history books, the kings and revolutionaries who shaped borders and laws. But there is another kind of legacy, one found not in battles or political proclamations, but in the realm of ideas, innovation, and the human spirit in competition. These are the symbols that have traveled beyond Serbia's frontiers to become part of the global story, names that have brought the nation pride and recognition in the most unexpected ways. To discover these legacies is to find hidden jewels that reveal yet another facet of the Serbian soul. No name shines more brightly or more mysteriously than Nikola Tesla. Though he spent most of his life in America, his Serbian heritage is a source of immense national pride. Tesla was more than an inventor. He was a visionary, a mind that imagined the modern world long before it existed. Alternating current, radio, remote control, the very foundations of 21st century life, all bear the mark of his genius. Why does Tesla's legacy hold such a sacred place in Serbia? Because he embodies the nation's boundless creative potential. In a history so often defined by conflict and struggle, Tesla represents a different kind of power. The power of the mind, of an imagination that can change the world. Belgrade's International Airport is named for him. The Nikola Tesla Museum in the city center is not just a showcase of his inventions. It is a shrine, where his ashes are kept in a glowing, golden orb, an eternal tribute to the mind that lit up the planet. He is living proof that a small nation can produce giants. If Tesla is the hero of the scientific past, Novak Djokovic is the king of the athletic present. In the world of tennis, a sport often dominated by wealthy Western nations, the rise of a boy from a war-torn country is a near-mythical story. Djokovic is not just an athlete. He is a symbol of redefined resilience and that spirit of Inat. He channeled the hardships of his childhood, practicing in an empty swimming pool to avoid bombs, into an unbreakable mental fortitude on the court. For Serbs, every Djokovic victory is more than a Grand Slam title. It is a vindication on the world stage. Every time he holds up 3 fingers in the traditional Serbian salute, it's a message to the world that we are here, we are proud, and we can be the best. He carries the weight and hope of an entire nation on his shoulders, and he has turned that pressure into the fuel for greatness. Alongside these giants, there are smaller, more curious details that reveal how Serbia positions itself in the modern digital world. One of the most intriguing is its internet country code. Contrary to simple logic, Serbia's domain is not .sr, but .rs. Why the difference? The answer lies in international standards. .rs is the official abbreviation for the Republic of Serbia, This seemingly minor detail is actually significant. It is present everywhere, on websites, email addresses, and even license plates. It is a subtle but constant reminder of the nation's formal identity in a connected world. It shows that even in the virtual space, asserting a clear and correct identity is paramount. It is a way of saying that, even in the smallest technical detail, we are the Republic of Serbia. From the genius of Tesla and the iron will of Djokovic, to the digital signature of the .rs domain, these symbols paint a picture of Serbian pride and identity in the modern world. They show a people who look not only to a proud past of medieval kings, but who also find their heroes in science, sport, and technology. These legacies are bridges connecting Serbia to the rest of the world, demonstrating its contributions and its presence on the global stage. Having journeyed through the highs and lows of its history, explored the diversity of its lands, and met its icons, the final question remains. What does this all mean for the future? Where is Serbia's journey headed? Our journey along the currents of history and the roads of the present is coming to a close, right back where we started, at the confluence of two rivers, under the shadow of the ancient fortress. We have traveled through centuries of empires and kingdoms, felt the pain of collapse and the joy of rebirth. We have tasted the richness of the cuisine, heard the echoes of brass bands, and witnessed the rise of icons who carried Serbia's name to the world. Looking back now, the picture of this country is no longer a series of disconnected facts, but a seamless story of endurance, an epic of a people who have been bent but never broken. So, what have we learned about Serbia? We have learned that it is a land of profound contrasts. It is a place where the beauty of ancient Orthodox monasteries coexists with the stark brutalist architecture of a bygone era. It is where deep, soulful hospitality lives side by side with a defiant spirit of Inat. It is where the melancholy of history has not extinguished a fierce joy for life, a joy expressed in every shared glass of rakića and every dance at a boisterous festival. Serbia is not an easy destination, a place that can be captured in a few postcards. It demands patience. It requires you to listen for the unsaid stories, to read the meaning behind the smiles, and to understand that the scars of the past are part of what makes the present beautiful. It is this very complexity, this refusal to be easily defined, that is its true essence. And perhaps the most profound lesson Serbia offers is about the nature of resilience itself. Resilience here is not rigidity, not the ability to resist change. On the contrary, it is the ability to adapt, to absorb, and to transform. Just as the Danube absorbs the waters of countless tributaries on its way to the sea, Serbia has absorbed the influence of Romans, Ottomans, Austro-Hungarians, and more, yet has always maintained its own core current. Their resilience lies in their ability to turn a military defeat into a spiritual victory, to channel a painful past into athletic and scientific achievement, and to transform a volatile geographic position into a rich cultural identity. It is a strength that comes not from forgetting the past, but from confronting it, learning from it, and continuing to move forward. As the sun sets behind the walls of the Kalemegdan fortress, casting a golden glow on the waters of the two rivers, a feeling of renewal and hope fills the air. The challenges of the future remain. The path to European integration, economic hurdles, and the healing of history's final wounds. But if this journey has taught us one thing, it is to never underestimate Serbia's capacity to recover. The river of history here may be turbulent, but it always flows forward. In the end, Serbia is more than a destination on a map. It is a lesson in living. It is a reminder that even after the most devastating storms, life finds a way to sprout, culture finds a way to bloom, and the human spirit, in all its complexity and beauty, will endure. The invitation is not just to come and see, but to come and feel, to listen, and to understand the beat of a resilient heart, a hidden gem of the Balkans.